The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with 1,000 different languages, translated instantly by neural implants into comprehensible speech. Ambassador Zexhai of the Korthak Empire adjusted his ceremonial armor, the metal plates catching the artificial starlight that illuminated the massive dome. Around him, representatives from over 300 species discussed the latest territorial disputes, trade agreements, and military alliances that kept the galaxy in a delicate balance of power. "The humans request audience," announced Chancellor Mordak, her 6 arms gesturing toward the chamber's entrance. A collective ripple of what could only be described as amusement passed through the assembled delegates. The humans had been members of the Galactic Council for barely 2 standard cycles, and their requests were often met with polite indifference at best. Ambassador Sarah Chun entered the chamber with measured steps, her simple diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate displays of power worn by other species. She carried herself with quiet confidence, but Zexhai noticed how small she appeared next to the towering Veltar representatives or the heavily armored Graxian delegation. The humans were notorious for their physical limitations compared to most galactic species. "Honored delegates," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Earth formally requests military assistance in defending against Zephyrian expansion into human-controlled sectors." The reaction was immediate. Clicks, growls, and harmonic vibrations filled the air as various species expressed their skepticism. The Zephyrians have been expanding aggressively for decades, absorbing smaller civilizations into their empire through superior technology and overwhelming force. They were among the galaxy's apex predators, both literally and figuratively. "The Zephyrians possess quantum phase weaponry," rumbled General Vokhtar of the Graxian Military Collective, his voice like grinding stone. "Their battle cruisers can phase through conventional shields. What could the humans possibly offer in return for risking such a confrontation?" Sarah's expression remained steady. "We offer what we have always offered: innovation, adaptability, and determination. Our species may not possess the raw strength of the Graxians or the technological advancement of the Veltar, but we have qualities that have served us well throughout our history." A series of harmonic tones from the Veltar section translated as laughter. "Determination is admirable, Ambassador Chun, but it does not stop quantum torpedoes," said High Scientist Kelmoth, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into dancing patterns. "The Zephyrians have conquered 17 systems in the past cycle alone. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming technological superiority." "Perhaps," Zexhai interjected, his voice carrying the authority of the Korthak Empire, "the humans should consider voluntary integration into the Zephyrian Empire. Many species have found prosperity under their rule. It would spare unnecessary bloodshed." Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The human race does not surrender. We never have, and we never will. We're asking for allies, not saviors." The chamber fell into a contemplative silence. Most delegates had read the reports about human history: violent, chaotic, filled with internal conflicts that seemed to serve no purpose other than destruction. Humans fought wars over resources, ideology, even abstract concepts like freedom and honor. To most galactic species, such behavior seemed wasteful and primitive. "Your species has been at war with itself for most of its recorded history," observed Chancellor Mordak. "How can you expect to stand against the Zephyrian war machine when you cannot even achieve lasting peace among your own kind?" "Because," Sarah replied, "those conflicts taught us something that peaceful civilizations never learn: how to fight when everything is at stake, how to adapt when traditional tactics fail, how to find victory even when defeat seems certain." The Altarian delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with skeptical patterns. "The Zephyrians destroyed the Corvan defense fleet in less than 6 hours. The Corvans were renowned warriors, enhanced with cybernetic implants, and wielding weapons forged from neutron star material. What makes you think humans can succeed where they failed?" Sarah touched a control on her wrist device, and a holographic display materialized above the chamber floor. It showed a three-dimensional map of human space, with red indicators marking Zephyrian incursions and yellow markers representing human defensive positions. The Corvins fought the Zephyrians using conventional tactics, Sarah explained. They met their battle fleets in open space, shield against shield, weapon against weapon. They fought the war their enemies expected them to fight. She gestured, and the display zoomed in on a particular system. 3 days ago, the Zephyrians attacked the Proxima colony with a fleet of 12 battle cruisers. Our defenders numbered exactly 4 patrol vessels and an orbital defense platform that was 3 decades out of date. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the chamber. Such odds were beyond hopeless, they were suicidal. The Zephyrian commander, Admiral Thexmol, demanded immediate surrender. He gave the colonists 4 hours to evacuate before beginning orbital bombardment. Sarah's voice carried no emotion, but her hands were steady as stone. The human commander, Captain Maria Santos, sent a single-word reply no. The display changed, showing tactical readouts from the battle. Captain Santos didn't try to match the Zephyrian fleet in a direct engagement. Instead, she used the asteroid field surrounding Proxima as cover. Her patrol ships carried mining charges normally used for breaking up asteroids for mineral extraction. Zexhai leaned forward, his interest genuinely caught despite himself. Mining charges against battle cruisers? The human ships lured the Zephyrians into the asteroid field, then detonated strategic charges to create a debris storm. While the enemy fleet was forced to raise defensive screens and reduce speed, our ships used the cover to plant magnetic mines on their hulls. The tactical display showed the battle's progression. Red dots representing Zephyrian ships began winking out one by one as the mines detonated against their armor. Ingenious, admitted High Scientist Kelmoth, though his tone remained skeptical. But surely a single battle does not prove it wasn't a single battle, Sarah interrupted quietly. Admiral Thexmol survived with 6 ships and retreated to reorganize. He returned 1 week later with reinforcements, 18 battle cruisers, 2 dreadnoughts, and a support fleet. The chamber grew very quiet. Captain Santos had used that week to evacuate most of the civilian population, but she remained with a skeleton crew and every piece of mining equipment the colony possessed. When the Zephyrians arrived, they found the entire asteroid field rigged with explosives. The tactical display expanded, showing the massive scale of the trap. The humans had spent a week turning their own star system into a weapon. When Admiral Thexmol's fleet entered the field, Captain Santos triggered a chain reaction that created an artificial asteroid storm spanning millions of cubic kilometers. Impossible, breathed General Vakhtar. The energy requirements alone, the humans used the star itself, Sarah continued. They had positioned solar collection satellites to focus stellar energy into concentrated beams, which they used to destabilize the largest asteroids at precise moments. The resulting cascade effect trapped the entire Zephyrian fleet. The display showed the aftermath. Of 20 Zephyrian warships, only 3 had escaped the system. Captain Santos and her crew didn't survive the battle, Sarah concluded. But Admiral Thexmol's entire invasion force was eliminated. The Zephyrians lost more ships in that single engagement than in their previous 5 conquests combined. A long silence settled over the chamber. The implications were staggering. A handful of human patrol ships had accomplished what entire battle fleets had failed to achieve. One victory does not constitute a military doctrine, Chancellor Mordak observed, but her tone had shifted from dismissal to cautious interest. Sarah nodded. You're absolutely right, which is why I'm authorized to share additional intelligence with the Council. The holographic display changed again, showing star charts marked with recent battle sites. The Zephyrians have attacked 7 human systems in the past month. They've been repelled from 6 of them. The chamber erupted in surprised voices. The Zephyrians hadn't been successfully resisted since they began their current expansion campaign. Each human defense force used different tactics, Sarah continued. On New Terra, our commanders flooded space around the planet with metallic chaff that disrupted quantum phase targeting systems. On Kepler Station, they used the station's industrial fabricators to build thousands of decoy ships that confused Zephyrian sensors. She gestured to another star system. At the Vega shipyards, human defenders actually allowed the enemy to capture the facility, then triggered a computer virus that spread through the Zephyrian fleet's network systems when they attempted to download our ship specifications. High Scientist Kelmoth's crystalline form flickered with rapid light patterns indicating intense thought. These tactics suggest a level of innovative thinking that is unusual among galactic military doctrines. That's because most galactic civilizations develop along predictable paths, Sarah replied. They achieve faster-than-light travel, establish interstellar governments, create standardized military technologies. But humans evolve differently. We spent millennia fighting wars with limited resources, which forced us to develop unconventional solutions. Zexhai found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. You're suggesting that your species' violent history is actually an advantage? I'm saying that our conflicts taught us to think like our enemies, to anticipate their moves, and to find weaknesses where others see only strength. Sarah's voice carried quiet conviction. The Zephyrians are powerful, but they're also predictable. They rely on technological superiority and overwhelming force because those tactics have always worked for them. And when those tactics fail, asked General Vakhtar, then they're fighting a war they don't know how to win against an enemy they don't understand. The chamber fell silent again as delegates processed this information. The humans weren't asking for military aid out of weakness. They were proposing an alliance based on a completely different approach to warfare. Chancellor Mordak's 6 arms moved in the gesture that called for formal discussion. The Council will consider humanity's request. However, committing military resources against the Zephyrian Empire is not a decision to be made lightly. We understand, Sarah replied. But consider this while you deliberate. The Zephyrians view every species in the galaxy as either a subject or an enemy. Today, they're expanding into human space. Tomorrow, they'll turn their attention to your territories. Ambassador Zexhai felt a chill despite his species' natural resistance to temperature variation. The Korthak Empire had avoided conflict with the Zephyrians primarily by staying out of their expansion path, but that strategy had obvious limitations. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Sarah activated her wrist device again, and a new display appeared showing detailed schematics and tactical proposals. Joint military exercises to share human tactical innovations with allied forces. Combined research initiatives to develop countermeasures against Zephyrian quantum phase technology. And coordinated intelligence gathering to identify weaknesses in their supply lines and command structure. You're suggesting we learn to fight like humans, observed the Altarian delegate. I'm suggesting you learn to fight like survivors, Sarah corrected. Because that's what we'll all need to become if the Zephyrian expansion continues unchecked. The session concluded with agreements to study humanity's proposals and reconvene within one standard cycle. As delegates filed out of the chamber, Zexhai found himself approaching the human ambassador. Ambassador Chan, he called. Sarah turned, her expression carefully neutral. Ambatsa Zexhai. Your presentation was most illuminating. The Korthak Empire values tactical innovation. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Perhaps we might discuss these matters further in a less formal setting. Sarah's smile was subtle but genuine. I'd welcome that opportunity. As they walked together through the council's corridors, Zexhai reflected on how much his perspective had changed in a single session. The humans had entered the chamber as supplicants seeking aid. They were leaving as potential teachers of an entirely new form of warfare. Tell me, he said quietly, do you truly believe your species can defeat the Zephyrian Empire? Sarah considered the question seriously. I believe that empires built on the assumption of inevitable victory are often surprised by enemies who refuse to accept inevitable defeat. And if you're wrong, then we'll lose fighting for something we believe in, rather than surrender to something we despise. Her voice carried the same quiet steel he'd heard during her presentation. In human philosophy, there are fates worse than death. Zethai not deaths thou. Perhaps the galaxy had underestimated humanity, not because they were weak, but because strength took forms that other species didn't recognize. The coming conflict would test that theory in ways that none of them could yet imagine. The war was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The Zephyrian War Council convened in the shadow of their greatest achievement, the Nexus Fortress, a mobile command station the size of a small moon. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor gazed through the massive transparisteel viewport at the assembled armada stretched before him like a constellation of deadly stars. Over 800 vessels of various classes floated in perfect formation, representing the largest military force the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled. The human resistance has become an irritant that requires decisive action, Admiral Keth Vor declared, his four arms manipulating holographic displays that showed recent battle reports. Around the war table, his senior commanders studied the data with growing concern. 17 separate engagements in the past 2 cycles, reported Intelligence Director Yexhai, her scale features flickering with bioluminescent patterns of frustration. The humans have cost us 43 vessels and delayed our expansion schedule by 6 months. Impossible, growled General Thakmar, his cybernetic implants glowing red with indignation. No species has ever maintained such resistance against our quantum phase weaponry. The reports must contain errors. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show tactical recordings from recent battles. The errors are ours, General. We have been fighting an enemy we do not understand, using assumptions that no longer apply. The display showed footage from the Battle of Titan's Gate, where a single human frigate had somehow disabled an entire Zephyrian battle group. The human vessel had used its own reactor as an improvised weapon, creating an electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disrupted the quantum phase systems of nearby ships. The humans sacrificed their own vessels as weapons, observed Fleet Commander Exdal. This behavior is irrational. Ship construction requires significant resources that cannot be easily replaced. Unless, Intelligence Director Yexhai interjected, the humans consider certain objectives more valuable than material losses. Our intelligence suggests they prioritize what they call strategic objectives over tactical preservation. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor had been studying human military history during the long journey to their space, and what he discovered troubled him deeply. The humans have a saying, victory at any cost. Unlike other species, they appear willing to accept catastrophic losses if they believe the result serves a larger purpose. The War Council fell silent. Most galactic civilizations approached conflict with careful calculations of acceptable losses versus strategic gains. The idea of deliberately accepting certain destruction for uncertain advantage was alien to their thinking. What do our analyses suggest about their current defensive capabilities? Asked General Thakmar. Intelligence Director Yexhai manipulated the holographic controls, displaying a 3-dimensional map of human space. 47 star systems under human control, connected by 17 major shipping routes. Their total military consists of approximately 2,000 vessels, most of which are classified as patrol craft or system defense platforms. Insignificant, declared Fleet Commander Rexdal. Our armada alone outnumbers their entire fleet by a factor of 3, and our individual vessels possess superior firepower and defensive capabilities. That assessment would be accurate if the humans fought conventional engagements, Supreme Admiral Keth Vor replied. However, their tactics appear designed specifically to negate our technological advantages. The display changed to show recent intelligence reports. In the Battle of Kepler's Star, they used industrial mining equipment to alter the orbital mechanics of an entire asteroid belt, creating a debris field that channeled our fleet into predetermined kill zones. At New Shanghai, they evacuated the entire population to underground shelters, then triggered a controlled collapse of the planetary crust when our forces attempted to land. Barbarik Mater General Tokmar. They destroyed their own infrastructure rather than allow capture. Effective, corrected Intelligence Director HFY. Our forces were forced to withdraw after taking heavy casualties from seismic weapons they never anticipated. The humans then emerged from their shelters and rebuilt everything within one planetary cycle. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor studied the tactical readouts with growing unease. Every human victory followed the same pattern. They sacrificed something valuable to achieve something more valuable, using their enemies' expectations against them. Show them the Vega incident, he ordered. The holographic display shifted to show the aftermath of what should have been a routine conquest. The Vega system contained humanity's largest shipbuilding facility, a prize that would have significantly enhanced Zephyrian industrial capacity. Admiral Thex Mole's task force consisted of 36 vessels, Intelligence Director HFY reported. Initial resistance was minimal: 2 human corvettes and a handful of system patrol ships. Our forces achieved orbital supremacy within 4 hours and began landing operations. The humans allowed us to capture the entire facility without significant resistance, Fleet Commander Rexdal observed. Our intelligence suggested they were finally demonstrating rational behavior. Until the trap was triggered, Supreme Admiral Keth Vor said grimly. The display showed the devastating results. The shipyard's quantum furnaces had been rigged with an intricate series of feedback loops that created a cascade failure in the facility's power grid. The explosion had been visible from 3 star systems away. 17 Zephyrian vessels destroyed. Intelligence Director HFY continued. Admiral Thex Mole survived, but his flagship required 6 months of repairs. The humans lost their largest industrial facility, but eliminated nearly half our invasion fleet. They traded a fixed asset for mobile ones, General Thokmar realized. The shipyard could be rebuilt, but our vessels and crews cannot be easily replaced. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor nodded. The humans understand something that our previous enemies did not. Infrastructure can be reconstructed, but strategic momentum cannot be recovered. They are willing to accept short-term devastation to achieve long-term advantage. A new voice entered the discussion as Communications Officer Zelkan approached the war table. Supreme Admiral, we're receiving transmission from the Galactic Council. They request immediate cessation of hostilities pending formal negotiations. The Council seeks to protect their newest members, Fleet Commander Rexdal observed. Standard diplomatic procedure. Not standard, Intelligence Director HFY corrected, accessing her databanks. Previous Council interventions occurred only after formal alliance treaties were established. The humans have been Council members for barely 2 cycles. This suggests their recent military successes have gained them political leverage. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor considered the implications. What do we know about human diplomatic activities? Ambassador Sarah Chun has been conducting private meetings with representatives from 12 major species, Intelligence Director HFY reported. Our sources suggest she's been sharing human tactical innovations in exchange for intelligence cooperation and material support. They're building an alliance, General Thokmar realized. Not just requesting aid, but offering valuable military knowledge. The holographic display showed a new set of data intelligence reports from across the galaxy. 7 species have begun implementing human-inspired tactics in their own military exercises, Intelligence Director HFY continued. The Korthak Empire has reorganized 3 battle fleets to emphasize mobility and unconventional weaponry. The Veltar Confederacy is developing new sensor disruption technologies based on human electronic warfare principles. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor felt the first stirrings of genuine concern. The Zephyrian Empire had built its expansion on the assumption that superior technology and overwhelming force would continue to guarantee victory. If other species began adopting human-style asymmetric warfare, the entire strategic balance of the galaxy could shift. "What are our intelligence estimates regarding human defensive preparations?" he asked. Intelligence Director HFY manipulated the display, showing detailed scans of human space. Massive civilian evacuations are underway in 17 systems. However, the evacuation routes suggest they're consolidating population centers rather than fleeing the region entirely. Consolidating for what purpose? Unknown. The humans have also been requesting large quantities of industrial fabrication equipment from their trading partners. Raw materials, automated construction systems, quantum processors. The pattern suggests major infrastructure development. Fleet Commander Rexdal leaned forward, studying the data. They're building something large enough to require resources from multiple star systems. Or multiple somethings, General Thakmar corrected. The resource requests are distributed across 7 different star systems. Whatever they're constructing, it's not centralized. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor absorbed this information with growing unease. How long until our armada reaches human space? 18 standard days, Communications Officer Zelkan replied. And how long have they had to prepare since our last major engagement? 43 days. The War Council fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans have been buying time with their defensive victories, and they'd use that time for some unknown preparation. Given their demonstrated creativity in warfare, the possibilities were deeply unsettling. Supreme Admiral, Intelligence Director HFY said quietly, "There's something else. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual quantum signatures in 3 human star systems. The energy readings suggest massive gravitational manipulations." Gravitational weapons? General Thakmar asked. Unknown. The signatures are unlike anything in our database. But the scale of the energy involved suggests planetary-level engineering projects. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at his assembled armada. 800 vessels, each one a masterpiece of Zephyrian military engineering. The most powerful fleet ever assembled by his species, designed to crush any conceivable resistance. Supreme Admiral, Fleet Commander Rexdal ventured. Perhaps we should consider the Council's request for negotiations. If the humans have developed new weapons technology, no, Keth Vor replied firmly. The Empire does not negotiate with prey species. We will proceed as planned and demonstrate to the galaxy that Zephyrian supremacy cannot be challenged by clever tactics or innovative thinking. But even as he spoke those words, Supreme Admiral Keth Vor felt a nagging doubt. The humans had already demonstrated that clever tactics could neutralize superior technology. Their willingness to sacrifice anything for strategic advantage was unlike any enemy the Empire had ever faced. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," he ordered. "We advance the timeline. I want to reach human space before they complete whatever they're building." As his commanders dispersed to relay orders throughout the armada, Supreme Admiral Keth Vor remained at the viewport. In the distance, stars glittered like the eyes of watching gods. Somewhere among those stars, humans were preparing for a war that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 worlds using the same basic strategy, overwhelming force applied through superior technology. It had never failed them. But then again, they had never fought an enemy that treated victory and defeat as merely different tools in a larger strategy. Intelligence Director, he called as HFY prepared to leave. "I want continuous monitoring of those quantum signatures. If the humans are developing new weapons, I need to know immediately." "Yes, Supreme Admiral. However, our analysts suggest that the energy patterns might not represent weapons at all." "Then what?" "Unknown. But the scale suggests engineering projects that would require the resources of entire star systems. Whatever the humans are building, it's larger than anything we've seen before." After she left, Supreme Admiral Keth Vor continued staring into space. The humans called their species Homo sapiens, which meant wise man in their ancient language. The Zephyrian Empire had dismissed that as primitive arrogance. Perhaps that had been their first mistake. In 18 days, they would discover whether human wisdom was stronger than Zephyrian might. The outcome would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Fortress Sol, humanity's greatest achievement and perhaps their final gambit. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows, she could see the impossible structure stretching into the distance, a ring of interconnected stations and platforms that completely encircled Earth's sun. The Dyson Swarm, as the engineers called it, represented 43 days of round-the-clock construction using resources stripped from every human world. Ma'am, long-range sensors confirm Zephyrian fleet composition, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. 807 vessels, including 12 Dreadnought-class ships and what appears to be a mobile command fortress. Time to contact, 6 hours, 14 minutes. Admiral Vasquez nodded and turned to address the assembled command staff. Representatives from 17 different species stood alongside human officers, a testament to the unprecedented alliance that had formed in response to the Zephyrian threat. Status report from all defensive sectors, she ordered. Perimeter stations report ready, announced Commander Zexhai of the Korthak Empire, his ceremonial armor replaced by practical combat gear. Our combined fleet elements are positioned according to the tactical plan. 237 vessels from 14 species, plus 412 human ships. Industrial conversion complete, added High Engineer Kelmoth of the Veltar Confederacy. Every civilian fabrication facility in human space has been retooled for military production. We have enough munitions stockpiled for extended combat operations. Admiral Vasquez appreciated the support, but she knew the numbers told only part of the story. Even with their allies, the combined fleet was outnumbered and outgunned by the approaching Zephyrian armada. Conventional tactics would result in certain defeat. What about the primary weapon system? She asked. Chief Engineer Maria Santos stepped forward, the daughter of Captain Santos, who had died defending Proxima Colony. The Solar Collection Array is operating at 97% efficiency. We're channeling the equivalent output of a Class G star through quantum-focusing crystals provided by our Veltar allies. And the targeting systems? Fully integrated with Korthak battle computers and Alterian prediction matrices, Santos continued. We can accurately focus stellar energy anywhere within a 3-light-hour radius. Admiral Vasquez absorbed this information while studying the tactical displays. The Dyson Swarm represented humanity's most audacious gambit, turning their own star into a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets. But like all human strategies, it required perfect timing and a willingness to risk everything. Admiral, interrupted communications officer Park, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian fleet. They're demanding immediate surrender of all human worlds. Put it through. The main display activated, showing the imposing figure of Supreme Admiral Kethvor. His 4 arms gestured dismissively as he spoke. Human Commander, I am Supreme Admiral Kethvor of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has demonstrated admirable tenacity, but this conflict ends now. Surrender your worlds and accept integration into the Empire or watch them burn. Admiral Vasquez stepped into view of the communication pickup. Supreme Admiral, I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Force. I'm afraid we must decline your generous offer. You face the largest military force ever assembled by the Empire. 800 vessels equipped with quantum phase weaponry and supported by unlimited resources. Your defeat is mathematically certain. Mathematics can be surprisingly flexible, Vasquez replied calmly. Your empire has conquered 47 worlds using the same strategy, overwhelming technological superiority. But you've never faced an enemy willing to turn an entire star system into a weapon. Supreme Admiral Kethvor's expression shifted slightly. Your bluff is transparent, human. No species possesses the technology to weaponize stellar output on a tactical scale. No species except the ones that built this. Admiral Vasquez gestured toward the viewports, where the Dyson swarm's massive structure was clearly visible. We call it Fortress Soul. It's not just a defensive installation, it's the largest weapon ever constructed. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates no such capability in human technology. You're absolutely right, Vasquez agreed. We couldn't build it alone. But we didn't build it alone. The display split to show additional viewpoints from across the solar system. Korthak engineers working alongside human technicians, Veltar quantum specialists calibrating focusing arrays, Altarian energy beings fine-tuning prediction algorithms. The greatest engineering project in galactic history had been a truly collaborative effort. The Galactic Council stands with humanity, Admiral Vasquez continued. Your expansion ends here. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor's image flickered with what might have been uncertainty. Even if your weapon functions as described, you cannot target 800 vessels simultaneously. We don't need to target them simultaneously, Vasquez replied. We just need to convince you that continuing this war will cost more than you're willing to lose. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Admiral Vasquez knew that the real battle was only beginning. The Zephyrians would probe their defenses, test their resolve, and look for weaknesses to exploit. All stations, this is Admiral Vasquez, she announced over the fleet communication network. The Zephyrian Armada is approaching. Remember, our objective is not to destroy their fleet, it's to demonstrate that their expansion cannot continue. We're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for the right to exist on our own terms. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The Zephyrian fleet approached in perfect formation, their quantum phase drives creating ripples in space-time that registered on every sensor array in the system. As they drew closer, their tactical superiority became increasingly apparent. They're deploying in attack formation, reported Commander HFY. Standard Zephyrian doctrine, multiple battle groups, advancing on parallel vectors to prevent concentrated defense. Quantum signatures are spiking, added High Engineer Kelmoth. They're charging their phase cannons. Admiral Vasquez watched the tactical display with calm focus. All fleet units, implement Dispersal Pattern Alpha. Do not engage until my direct order. The human-led Alliance fleet spread throughout the solar system, abandoning traditional formation, flying in favor of a regular positioning that maximized the coverage of the Dyson Swarm's defensive systems. Admiral, Communications Officer Park announced, the lead Zephyrian battle group is entering weapons range. Stand by. The first phase of the battle began exactly as Admiral Vasquez had predicted. The Zephyrians opened fire with their quantum phase cannons, weapons that could penetrate conventional shields and armor. Several human vessels took direct hits, their hulls flickering out of phase before exploding in brilliant flashes of light. Defensive screen is holding, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson. Casualties are within acceptable parameters. Admiral Vasquez nodded grimly. The humans and their allies were absorbing devastating losses, but each destroyed ship was part of the larger strategy. They were drawing the Zephyrian fleet deeper into the system, closer to the primary weapon's optimal range. Second battle group is engaging our port flank, announced Commander HFY. They're concentrating fire on the Korthak heavy cruisers. Tell them to fall back according to plan. Draw the enemy toward the inner system. For 3 hours, the battle raged across millions of kilometers of space. The Zephyrian fleet pressed forward, confident in their technological superiority, while the Alliance forces conducted a fighting retreat that led deeper into the solar system. Admiral, Chief Engineer Santos called from her station, we're approaching optimal targeting position. Solar collection array is at full power. Ennemi fleet disposition. 60% of their forces are within primary targeting range, Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported, including their command fortress and 8 of 12 dreadnoughts. Admiral Vasquez studied the tactical display one final time. The moment had arrived, the culmination of humanity's greatest gamble. Open communication to the Zephyrian flagship. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor appeared on the display, his four arms gesturing triumphantly. Your resistance has been admirable, Admiral Vasquez, but it ends now. Our forces will reach your inner planets within 2 hours. Actually, Supreme Admiral, I believe it's time for a demonstration. Admiral Vasquez turned to her weapons officer. Chief Santos, select a target. Something impressive, but not immediately lethal. Targeting the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Santos replied. Focusing array is locked and ready. Fire. The Dyson swarm came alive with brilliant energy as thousands of collection stations simultaneously channeled stellar output through quantum focusing crystals. A beam of concentrated starlight lanced across space, striking the asteroid belt with devastating precision. Rocks that had orbited the sun for billions of years simply ceased to exist, vaporized by temperatures that rivaled the star's core. The effect on both fleets was immediate. Alliance vessels had been warned to shield their sensors, but the Zephyrian ships were caught completely unprepared. The electromagnetic pulse from the vaporized asteroids temporarily disabled their sensors and communication systems. That was approximately 1/10 of our maximum output, Admiral Vasquez announced calmly. Targeted at the volume of space your fleet currently occupies, it would sterilize everything within a 50,000-kilometer radius. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor's image flickered as his ship's systems struggled to compensate for the electromagnetic interference. You would destroy your own star system? If necessary. The human species has a long history of accepting Pyrrhic victories when the alternative is surrender. Admiral Vasquez's voice carried absolute conviction. We're prepared to turn this entire system into a funeral pyre for both our fleets rather than submit to your empire. You're bluffing. No rational species would commit such destruction. Rationality is subjective, Admiral Vasquez replied. What you call rational, we call surrender. And surrender is not in human nature. She gestured to Chief Santos. Demonstrate our commitment. Target the outer edge of their fleet formation. The stellar weapon fired again, this time aimed at space occupied by 3 Zephyrian destroyers. The ships simply vanished, converted to plasma, and scattered atoms in an instant. Supreme Admiral Keth Vor's expression shifted from confidence to genuine alarm. You would sacrifice your own forces as well. If that's what victory requires, Admiral Vasquez confirmed. But we're not barbarians. We're offering you an alternative. Speak. Withdraw from human space. End your expansion campaign. Accept that the galaxy contains species you cannot conquer through force alone. The Empire does not retreat. Then, the Empire will learn a new definition of defeat. Admiral Vasquez nodded to her tactical officer. Begin charging sequence for maximum power. Target the center of their formation. The command center fell silent except for the humming of massive energy systems building to unprecedented levels. Throughout the Dyson swarm, collection stations began channeling the full output of humanity's sun toward quantum focusing arrays capable of concentrating stellar energy into a weapon of unimaginable destruction. Admiral, Communications Officer Park interrupted. Incoming transmission from multiple Zephyrian vessels. Several commanders are requesting private communication with their flagship. Admiral Vasquez smiled grimly. Let them talk. For 20 minutes, the Zephyrian fleet remained motionless while their commanders debated among themselves. Through intercepted communications, the Alliance forces could hear heated arguments between officers who wanted to continue the attack and others who recognized the hopelessness of their position. Finally, Supreme Admiral Keth Vor reappeared on the communication display. His posture suggested a being who had faced an impossible choice and found no acceptable options. The Empire will withdraw from human space, he announced. But this is not surrender, it is strategic repositioning. Call it whatever preserves your dignity, Admiral Vasquez replied. As long as you call it from outside our territory. This conflict has taught the Empire valuable lessons about human capabilities, Supreme Admiral Keth IV continued. We will not underestimate your species again. And we've learned that the galaxy is large enough for multiple definitions of strength, Admiral Vasquez responded. Perhaps future interactions can be more mutually beneficial. The Zephyrian fleet began its withdrawal with the same precision that had marked their approach. As the massive armada disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Vasquez felt the tension in the command center finally begin to ease. All stations, stand down from combat alert, she announced. Begin damage assessment and casualty reports. Commander Zexhai approached her station. Admiral, the Korthak Empire wishes to formalize our military alliance. Your tactics have proven that conventional assumptions about warfare may require significant revision. Likewise, the Veltar Confederacy seeks continued technological cooperation, added High Engineer Kelmoth. The innovations developed for this conflict have applications far beyond military usage. Admiral Vasquez nodded, but kept her attention focused on the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was retreating, but the war wasn't truly over. It had simply evolved into something different. Begin dismantling the weapon systems, she ordered. Convert the Dyson swarm back to peaceful energy production, but keep the focusing arrays. Let the galaxy know that we built this once and can build it again if necessary. As the cleanup began, Admiral Vasquez reflected on what humanity had accomplished. They had faced the greatest military force in the galaxy and emerged victorious not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through a combination of innovation, cooperation, and absolute determination. The galaxy would never see humans as weak again. More importantly, they had proven that strength took many forms, and that the will to resist could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. In the end, the war had been won not by the strongest species, but by the one that refused to accept defeat as inevitable. It was a lesson that would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come.